Hey team, how are we doing? This is the Alex Gem Experience. Welcome to the podcast. Today's podcast is essentially about mindfulness, the importance of being present, how it affects our lives, how to experience the present moment in these more blissful, beautiful states far more often. So, obviously we live in a society at the moment where we feel like high demand. We're constantly got so many things that we need to juggle. And there's an influx of insane amounts of information from technology, from social media, from television, from all these different avenues. And Tony Robbins says it brilliantly. He says, as humanity, we're abundant in information, but we're lacking wisdom. Essentially. And that's the biggest issue we face in today's society. Our biggest problem is the fact that most of us spend the majority of our lives living in chronic stress. We spend up to 70% of our lives living in chronic fear, because the synonym for stress is fear. Another version of stress is anxiety. It's overwhelm, it's overthinking, it's analytical thought, it's high beta frequency, really feeling overwhelmed, stressed, unable to cope, and so on and so forth. And, this is where, as a culture, as society, this is where we find ourselves. And now more than ever before, we need to be more mindful, because we've got all these challenges that we face with the biological presence of our reptilian brain, the medulla, with its primary function of survival and reproduction, and it's constantly aware, fearful, feels threatened, and it's constantly looking for safety and to avoid any risk-taking. So we're battling that as society. We're also battling our own personalities, our own conditioned consciousness we're facing, and we're being challenged with. We're battling with our own past. A lot of people are stuck in their past, unable to move and change. So if there's an experience that has great emotional intensity attached to it, then you are essentially controlled by that experience, and you are unable to create a new reality, a new life for yourself, or new results in your life, if you're constantly revisiting the past, if you're constantly reminding yourself of who you are, what you know, your identity at the moment. And not only are we facing these things, but we're also facing external demands with our jobs, the ever-increasing pressures of the workplace, and all these sorts of things. And that's why people fail to switch off. And that's why a lot of people are struggling with their relationships, because they need to be a certain way in their demanding jobs, and they're unable to flip the switch and become more calm, become more present, become more focused on their partners, for example. So a lot of relationships are suffering. Like I said earlier, too much information, not knowing what to listen to, not doing anything because of too many options, and all these sorts of challenges that we face in today's society. And the key thing we need to do is focus on being present. In many ways, going backwards to a more simple state. Not simplistic, but simple. Because a lot of people are struggling with depression, with stress, with all kinds of illnesses, and all illnesses are created through stress. So essentially, if you tie the dots, that does not make sense. You don't tie any dots. I don't know what's going on in my mind. But if you connect the dots, then you will understand that if our current lifestyles are creating chronic stress, and if chronic stress means we're overly identifying with the ego, identifying with the mind too much, and where there is the ego, there is fear, and therefore stress is a consequence of the ego, which is a consequence of fear, and we need to change this. And the best way to get out of fear is through love and the present moment, and being grateful and appreciative of the things that we have and where we are right now. Because if you think about it, the now is all we ever have. There's no such thing as the future. You just constantly have whatever is happening now. Do you know what I mean? It's not like this kind of like utopian, unusual state where people live in a fantasy world where they're constantly thinking, things will get better for me in the future. No, well, you need to create your future now. What you do now determines your future. You don't just turn up in the future and hope that something will work out for you. That's absurdity. You can't create new results with the same kind of thinking that we use to construct these things. I'm paraphrasing Albert Einstein there. If you want new results, you need to do new things. You need to think in new ways. You need to behave in new ways. You need to reduce the influence of your own ego. You need to be able to let go of possessions, things that you have, people whom you think belong to you, and these sorts of things. So you need to pull away and detached and become more objective in your life, and not to be too emotionally connected to the things and the people in your life, and instead become more connected to being present, focusing on silence rather than noise, gravitating to peace rather than excitement or stimulation. Because the more we seek pleasure, the more unhappy we shall be. It's quite deep, I must say, but it's true. So in this podcast, we're going to look at the importance of being mindful, how to be mindful, why we need to be mindful. Now, being present means being fully immersed and focused on the immediate experience. There is no thought when you are fully present. If there is thought, then you are not fully present. You might be partially present, but you're not fully present. So being fully present means really giving the experience to where you are now. It means focusing on the senses. It means focusing on your breathing. It means really feeling connected and in the element. There is no thinking. You're not thinking analytically. You're not coming up with solutions necessarily. There is no thought. You're not pondering the past or ruminating the future. There's none of that. Because to do so means to be engaged with the ego. And you cannot be present if the ego is present. They can't live simultaneously. And that's the challenge that we face here. The importance of being fully present. Now, we can be fully present in many, many different ways. Okay? We can be fully present when you're on holiday and you're looking at the beautiful beach, and you're looking at the mountains. You can be present when you're with a loved one, when you're making love, for example. You can be fully present when you focus on your breathing. You can be fully present when, being in the presence of maybe a pet that you have, or a baby, or a child of yours, or someone else's. Like, these are really blissful, simple, beautiful states where there's no thought needed. There's no judgment. No one analyzes a baby. No one analyzes a kitten or a puppy. No one necessarily analyzes the mountains. You're not thinking, that mountain that mountain offends me. That mountain means that I'm wrong. Because that would be analytical thinking, evaluative thinking, criticizing, judging, and therefore being dominated by one's egoic mind. So the key challenge for us is to be able to experience those blissful states of being and bring that to our more overwhelming, overbearing, stressful culture and society. And when you can do that, then you'll notice profound differences. You will no longer be living in chronic stress. You'll be much less likely to manifest an illness or a disease or massively ruin your immune system or your mental impairment. It will delay the onset of all kinds of age-related illnesses like dementia and so on and so forth. The key is presence. The antidote to stress is presence and love and great gratitude. So you can improve your health by being more present. You can improve your health and your wealth for that matter, and your relationships. All of these fundamental things can be massively improved by simply being focused on one thing at a time. And that's something that I wanted to address as well. Yes, you can directly experience the present moment through things like meditation and deep breathing and these kind of blissful, enriched scenery like the mountain tops and all these sorts of things. That's a direct way of doing it. But you can also still appreciate and be in the present moment when you're working towards your goals, when you're working on your priorities, when you're having conversations, going to meetings, working on projects, completing tasks, even cleaning your house. You can still experience the present moment in these states, because it's about being fully immersed in what you're doing and not allowing your mind to drift to that kind of obsessive analytical thinking that takes over and pervades. And where there is ego, negativity is not far away either. So don't think that you have to constantly be in this kind of meditative state where you're never thinking any thoughts. That's impossible. It's inevitable that you will need to be thinking to come up with solutions, to use your analytical, evaluative, executive functioning cortex to operate at your best, to be more productive in certain ways. That's absolutely fine. That does not mean that you're losing the present moment. You lose the present moment when you start pondering your past. Because when you ponder your past, it now dictates your present moment experience. And you cannot create, you cannot be, you cannot thrive if you're thinking about painful experiences of the past. Or if you're worried about your financial future, or you're worried about your future with your existing partner, and you're worried that you might not be together. And when you start to think negative things and you start to envision the worst case scenarios, you're being absorbed by the ego again. So yes, things like meditation, deep breathing, yoga, exercise, these sorts of things are fantastic ways to experience the present moment directly. But you can still have that overriding presence of joy, inner peace and happiness. You can and should always have that kind of feeling in the background. It should always be there. For example, if your partner were to break up with you, obviously I'm not saying necessarily celebrate that experience if that's not what you wanted to happen, but you've still got that glowing sense of peace still in the background. Everything's still all right. You don't have to be overwhelmed. You don't have to scream and shout and get angry. Because when you do, you're acting out of fear. You're therefore acting out of your ego. And that you cannot operate at your best if you're operating from your ego. That's a fantastic quotation. I might have to write that one down. That was good. You cannot operate at your best if you're operating from your ego. Bear with me. Beautiful. And there we have it. I mean, and this is an incredibly powerful experience that when you start to experience more, you don't want to go back. You don't want to go back to thinking about the past or being worried about the future or thinking about how people perceive you, and you're being overly concerned with your reputation and wanting to be significant and feel superior, and you're wanting to get one over someone, or you want to get revenge or seek revenge on someone. Like, this is all limited egoic thinking. This is very unnecessary, inappropriate states of being. I'm not saying accept whatever happens in your life. I'm not saying put up with nonsense or put up with evil people in your life. Quite contrary. Instead, we need to operate at our best, be fully present, and if people and circumstances and situations do not suit our higher state of being, our unconditioned consciousness, where we're fully present and experience love, and we have that higher level of consciousness, of peacefulness, if people can't adapt to that, or if people bring negative energy to that, your energy field of consciousness, then you might want to disconnect and end your connection with them. kill them. No. Just essentially agree to part ways and move on with your life. Because you're going to want to be able to connect with like-minded people. You're going to want to operate in and amongst people who have unconditional love for you, with people who operate at that higher frequency, who aren't obsessed with their appearance and their body and the mind. I'm not saying neglect these things. Being in great shape is incredibly important to one's health and feeling good about yourself and feeling in control and having more energy and being in a better mood. These are all important things. But when you experience these states more and more, you're going to begin to realize what's fake and what's real. And you're not going to waste your time with things and people that are operating at that lower vibration. You're not going to want to surround yourself with people who are constantly negative, who don't support you and your level of consciousness. You don't want to operate with people who have conditional love for themselves and others. You don't want to operate with people who are harsh to themselves and also harsh to you. And that's the key thing here. And we want to get ourselves to a point when we are experiencing this inner peace often. And we want to practice being in the present moment so that we're able to quickly and rapidly change our state. If you ever get stressed or overwhelmed or you're involved in your immersed in your problems, you're going to want to have that control to just be able to flip the switch, if you will, and get back to that blissful, loving, appreciative state. Because that erodes fear. And when you erode fear, what will happen is for the rest of the day, you'll be able to make better choices throughout the day for yourself and your life. Because you're now operating out of love rather than fear and the ego. When you're fearful, you don't process information as well as you could do. You make worse choices. There becomes an imbalance in your neurochemistry. Your transmitters don't operate and become balanced. You start producing excessive levels of hormones and of neurotransmitters, like excessive expression of maybe norepinephrine and epinephrine, and that will negatively impact upon your sleep, your mood. You might become more irritable and all these sorts of things. And you want a balance in terms of your neurotransmitters that coordinate our behavior. You want a balance in terms of your energy and being present, not feeling overwhelmed. We all want to make better choices more often. We all want to be more productive. And this will massively enable you to sleep better. If you're someone who suffers from insomnia, really, you're suffering from your own ego. Because insomnia is tied to depression, and depression is tied to sadness. And to experience these negative states, you must be fearful. And to be fearful means to be identifying with your form, with your conditioned consciousness, with your personality, with your identity. And that's a very limited place to constantly operate from. So we want to develop that inner peace. We want to develop that control, that strength. And it's going to take patience. And when you look to make these changes happen, your own unconscious will start to work against you as well, guys. Your own subconscious programs will get involved because it wants sameness. This kind of meditative, blissful state will probably be new for you. And therefore, your mind, your subconscious programming, your software, if you will, in your mind, will want to intervene. And it will say things like, oh my God, are you really going to let that person get the better of you? Are you really going to lose that? Lose this or that? What did that person mean when he or she said that to you? You're going to start to overly analyze these kind of situations, start to be negative. And when you're operating from that, you've lost the present moment, you've lost your attention, you've lost your focus, you've lost your love. You've lost that loving feeling. A quote of a brilliant song. I forgot what that song is called. Anyway, sorry, we're not going to do that. And this is the key to true success and peace and happiness in one's life. It's the ability to control your own mind rather than letting the conditions of your conditioned consciousness control you. And like I said, your mind will look to trip you up because your unconscious is designed to fuel sameness. Whatever emotions, key core emotions you've programmed in your mind and body, your unconscious will look to enact that every single day. That negative field within you needs to be fed. So the kind of thoughts and feelings and behaviors you do on a daily basis, your unconscious, exemplified through your body is your unconscious. The things that you do on a daily basis typify your beliefs and your subconscious programming. That will look to experience certain things. And it will look to turn certain experiences into that in order to live like a parasite, if you will. So your unconscious wants sameness. It wants you to be safe. Sameness means certainty. Certainty means safety. And so instead, when you start to meditate, when you start to breathe deeply, when you start to experience bliss and mercy and love and gratitude and appreciation of yourself, of others, of everything in the world, because everything is you. You are love. God is love. You know, I know a lot of people who claim to be very religious and yet they're constantly wishing bad will to others and all these sorts of things, and they live within their egoic mind. And I'm like, there's a disconnect here. This is incongruent. Because when people start to defend their religion, when people start to defend and fight for their religion, now what are you fighting for? You're fighting for your beliefs, which means you're fighting for your identity because you feel threatened. So if people try to persuade you to think and feel in certain ways, like I share my opinions and my beliefs and my perceptions, but I'm not trying to force someone to think the same things I think. That's being persuasive. When you're looking to be persuasive, the ego is in full swing. So oftentimes people's political standpoints, people's religious standpoints, people's cultures and backgrounds are being defended because people are defending their identity. They want to prove that they're right. Well, if you're always having to prove that you're right, you're not in the present moment at all. You're not an enlightened being. You are not operating from love. Because you should be able to see love and see yourself in every living thing and creature in the world. Because that is us. We need to be love. Not give love to certain people or like certain people because they're from the same part of the world as us, or they're the same gender as us, or they experience that, or they're a soccer fan, or they're a rugby fan, or or they're a basketball fan. They support my team. That means I'll like them. Like, that's acting out of the ego. That is egoic, identity-based thinking. That is conditioned consciousness thinking. That is quite limited surface level stuff. So we need to be able to feel and give love to every person, every being, in every situation. And you don't get fearful and you lose that fear that you may have had for people who are different. Because the main reason why people don't like others are because they deem them to be different, right? We love and we really like people who we think to be similar to ourselves, right? And people hate what they do not know, because what they do not know is a threat and is therefore a threat to the ego. But if we're operating above and beyond that, if we are self-actualized, if we are self-realized, if we are aware and present, then there is no such thing as giving certain things to others and not to certain other people. You're just in that kind of blissful, peaceful state. I call it a happy humming. When you're operating from this place, you're constantly happy in the background. Even if things are not working out in your life, in your goals, people aren't being or behaving the way you ideally would have hoped they'd behave. They've reacted the way you did not want them to react. Maybe you lost your job, maybe you're getting divorced, maybe something difficult's happening to you, maybe you've gained weight and you're not really happy about these sort of things. Even if things are not going exactly as you had planned, you should still have that humming background noise of peace. And knowing that everything's okay, everything's fine, you can control how you feel. And whenever you get stressed out and you move further and further, because the more stressed out you become, the further and further you move from the present moment, right? You cannot be stressed then in the present moment. It just does not happen. So presence means love. Love means no judgment, no thought. It just means feeling, being, experiencing. And this is the main way to become enlightened. You know, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization is our ideal state where we are so abundant. We have everything we ever needed. We feel significant. We feel loved. We feel certain about things. We have enough variety in our lives to keep us going. We feel safe physiologically. We feel safe. We feel secure. We've got enough wealth and these sort of things that we're able to give more freely and abundantly, maybe in the form of giving to charities or giving your time or creating positive causes or serving more and more people. And we're not attached to possessions, things, places. I'm not attached to the watches I wear, the jewelry I wear. I'm not attached to the clothes that I own. I'm not attached to certain people. I don't have to become jealous of people or things or circumstances because we've taught ourselves to operate above and beyond. And if you feel envious or jealous or angry or argumentative, then it's down to you to return to your presence, to return to that peaceful, present, highly conscious state. Consciousness without thinking, simply being. So if you get stressed out, you don't want to think more, you want to think less. And that's how we're going to find presence. And you know, it's not about dishonoring who you are, your identity. Everyone has their own identity. Everyone is subjective, has their own personality. These are beautiful things. We must appreciate these things. But we cannot be attached to these things. We are better than that. But the problem is people get immersed in this because they analyze just what they see. They're focused on external things and places and people. They focus more on the visible than the invisible. And you cannot operate at this highest level that I'm referring to here, this unconditioned consciousness. You cannot live within the unmanifested. You cannot live within the present moment fully. You cannot be fully happy and content and peaceful and joyous yet be fully living in the external world, where you are now. Because this is a finite experience in this realm, as we all know. And, Wayne Dyer says we need to... And when I first learned from him many, many years ago, and I was like, what does he mean by this? He said we need to learn to die whilst we're alive. And a lot of people, that's a statement that needs to be broken down for people, because people misconstrue these kind of philosophies. He's not saying be sad now, or he's not saying take your life. Essentially, this means not being attached to the external world. Because if you're attached to your physical form, if you're attached to your body, if you're attached to your identity, we're all going to lose these things. Our body is constantly changing. Our lives are constantly changing. The world is constantly changing. And we cannot be defined by these changes or who we are. We must be defined by love from that greater consciousness, that unconditioned consciousness that we're after, that we seek. So if you're stressed out, we need to be more loving. If we're bored, we need to be more present. If we feel overwhelmed, we need to focus on our breathing. And this is the key to being mindful. It doesn't mean that you'll never get angry, or you'll never get sad or frustrated, or you'll never get exhausted or tired. The key is to always have that lingering inner peace, that lingering joy, that lingering happiness that takes over. So no matter what you're thinking or feeling, everything is always put into perspective. We should always be grateful no matter what our circumstance. And if you lose that gratefulness, if you lose that sense of appreciation, then that is when we've lost our love. And now, if we're living in the external world, if we're living with our identity, who we are, what we do, where we're from, what you know, how you're perceived, then even our loving relationships with people are also limited. And yes, you can teach and share these practices with people to help them along their path, to teach them. But the best way to do it is to live it. Because people will gravitate towards you. You will attract like-minded people. You will attract more people who operate from this high level of frequency. And others who are operating superficially, addicted to their egoic mind, their identity, their conditioned consciousness, they are the ones who will not really want to be engaged with you, who will not be excited to be around you or necessarily happy in your presence. They won't understand you. They'll think you're a bit out there, a little bit unusual. They want to go back to what they know. And that's fine. You don't want to be associated with people who are not living from this greater sense of awareness. Instead, we're the ones who want to simply be role models for others. And it starts with ourselves and our lives and practicing what we preach. So I want you to take a moment to think about how present you've been recently. Have you lost your presence? Have you become more judgmental as of late? Have you become overwhelmed? And how can you get back to a more blissful, peaceful state? How can you become more present? You can usually tell when you're having conversations with people. If people are reminding you, saying, "Are you listening to me?" Or you're having a conversation with someone, you're not actually paying attention to what they're saying, but you're kind of coasting through the conversation, if you will, then that should be a little sign that you're not present, that you are imbalanced, and your ego, your mind, you're identifying with the mind too much. And if you find yourself, a great way of being able to notice if you're not present as much as you should be, or if you've got something that's been playing on your mind that's distracting, disrupting you, then you know that something's wrong. And you need to take the time to step back, be calm, meditate, focus on your breathing, focus on being peaceful, be more silent, be more at one with yourself. For example, if you're someone who experiences flow and you love to do activities like playing sports or going to the gym, or you love going for walks, or you love being amongst nature, or you love dancing, or you love drawing and doing art, whatever it is that you really love to do, what your hobbies are, your passions, your interests, if you notice yourself doing them but you're unable to be fully immersed in the experience, it's because your mind is elsewhere. Therefore, you're not present. You're back to thinking addictively as it relates to your egoic mind. So there are many ways in which you can assess how you are. If your emotions are changing, if you've gone from being quite peaceful, quite calm, and all of a sudden you're a bit more irritable, you're a bit more impatient, you're a bit more frustrated, start to think about what's not working. Is it negatively impacting your sleep? Are you not active as much as you usually are? Have you stopped exercising? Has your nutrition changed? What's happened that's thrown you off course? What's imbalanced you? What kind of oxidative stress has been built from pollutants, pesticides, trauma, stressful occasions, overtraining, being inactive, not eating the right kind of foods that are fueling you? What's led to this kind of oxidative stress within your body that's thrown your chemistry, your neurochemistry out of balance? What's preventing you from getting back to that peaceful, present state? And when you're able to identify the problem, you're on your journey to get back to presence. Because the first sign to improve something in your life is to identify the problem. So we identify the problem. The easiest way to get back into being present is through breathing. Focus on every single inhale and exhale that you do. Putting your consciousness to your breathing. Calming yourself down. Calming down your mental circuitry. The more you calm down your thoughts, you think fewer and fewer thoughts per minute. You go from being high beta to being alpha to being theta. And you're fully present. There's no thought. It's pure experience, pure focus, pure alertness, awareness, consciousness. But there isn't that analytical thought. There's no judgment. There's no negativity. So catch yourself when you go astray. Bring yourself back through breath, visualization, thought. Bring yourself back to the present moment. Focus on the senses. What you can feel, what you can touch, perhaps taste, what you can see, what you can hear. So breathing is a great way of bringing yourself back to the present moment, experiencing sensory data fully and at a heightened level will enable you to get present. Experiencing flow, or even experiencing some kind of fearful states, Like, people experience the present moment when they're about to jump off a plane or go on a really scary roller coaster ride, for example, or do something really dangerous or scary. Because you have to be present, right? Because it could be life or death in your estimations. So these really kind of like scary risk-taking events, if there's no time to think, then you have to be fully present. You have to be reacting to what's going on. There's no time to plan and worry about and think about this and that. You're fully in the present moment. Same goes for experiencing flow. Like I said earlier, what your interests are. You should be able to experience flow, experience great focus. Time flies. You lose track of time. Time itself is one way of being connected to your egoic mind. Constantly being focused on time, what you have to do. Constantly being focused on what happened earlier. Constantly tracking time itself. Time is the ego. Time is the enemy. And when you're experiencing flow and time flies by, you've lost track of time because you've been immersed in the present moment. And that's a beautiful place to be. And it freaks a lot of people out. It scares people sometimes when they experience flow. Because people lose track of time. They're like, oh my God, what happened? They don't understand that that's actually a beautiful thing that they experience. So yes, if you've lost presence, be more loving, be more grateful. Think about and write down the things that you're grateful and appreciative for. And that will put you more in a peaceful state. Where you can go deeper and deeper into the present moment experience. So if you enjoyed this podcast, guys, you might want to get my book, The Art of Power, Happiness and Success. You can get that at Amazon. You can also get it at my store at www.alexgemstore.com. If you want to get into even better physical shape, for example, you might want to get my book, The Six-Pack Mind, to improve your health, to improve your physical shape, your energy levels, your mood. Beautiful book. And you can get that at the same places as well. You might want to get my course, The Power System, taking you from where you are now in your life to where you really want to be. If you want to be more present, if you want to be more abundant, if you want to override your limiting beliefs, if you want to achieve your goals, if you want to become more peaceful, more happy, more content, if you want to enjoy the present moment, if you want to focus on the process rather than the results, the ego, if you want to literally become wealthier, even healthier, if you want to improve the quality of your relationships, if you want to develop yourself, your being, take your life to that next level, this course is tremendous. All you need to do is go to my website, click where it says join PHS course today, enter your credit card details. You'll gain instant access to my revolutionary course, The Power System. I've also included tremendous bonuses, incredible ebooks worth $50 each, amazing bonuses including hours of exclusive video footage, podcast material and audio segments that aren't shared anywhere, and I've literally given them to you. Now, this course has taken me over 15 years of learning, of studying, through trial and error. And it's taken me and cost me thousands of pounds, tens of thousands really. The books, the workshops, the mentorships that I've gone on, the seminars I've attended from brilliant geniuses around the world. And also, it's essentially condensed 15 years of my life and put it into, plugged it into this course that I'm literally giving to you. So I'm giving you 15 years of my learning, my life. In this course, absolutely tremendous stuff. I offer 30-day money-back guarantee as well, just for the extra reassurance. I'm sure you're going to love it. It'd be lovely for you to join me live at one of my events, the Power Mastermind. Talk about changing one's life. Talk about delving deep and uncovering your fears, your problems, your concerns that have been holding you back in your past. Being able to come up with an action plan of new habits, new things you'll want to do on a daily basis, or learning what to eliminate, eradicate, delegate in your life so that you can free up more time to be your best self. You're going to learn how to maximize and fuel your existing strengths and become the best version of yourself. You're going to leave with a package, a plan, the power prioritization plan, with all the key learnings you've taken from myself, but also from other amazing, successful, enlightened people who will be attending the course alongside yourself. Really beautiful, powerful content that we provide there. It'll be lovely to meet you, to work with you for an entire day at the Power Mastermind. If you can't, you can actually get the course at my website as well. It's direct. You know where I told you the link to get the course earlier that I mentioned? Directly underneath that, it's called the Power Mastermind. Just click that button, check out all of the content, see if it's for you. Once you buy, you actually get access to, you can see me work live with an audience at a live event. So you've been given that. You've actually get all the worksheets, the activities that have cost me thousands of pounds to orchestrate and learn and create and provide for you. And you can actually see videos of me personally completing those activities. You can see my awful handwriting. And you can see me complete those activities so you can understand my journey, and also you can understand how to make the most of these activities. Incredible bonuses attached to the Power Mastermind, the course version as well. But I would prefer it if I work with you in person. That would be incredible to meet you and to learn from you and to really impact your life even more profoundly by working with you in person. Have a great day, guys. Be present as much as you can. Give more, be more, share more, challenge yourself more, step outside of your comfort zone and maximize your true, deepest potential. Have a great day. Look after yourself. Stay strong and stay present.